All right, so let's talk about how to get leads and how to sell. Um, there's a lot to be said on this topic, and I just wanted to maybe start with painting a picture of what are the ways that we can these days attract new business, attract new clients, do lead generation, demand generation, all that stuff. I think it's important to look at this from a kind of a helicopter view perspective so that we can then choose the right path, right strategy, right tactic, and then squeeze the most out of those individual approaches, because every business is different, each founder is different, and we have different skills, and sometimes we'll have to outsource certain things, and sometimes we'll have to bite the bullet for a bit and do the things that are uncomfortable. So let's look at the different ways on how to get clients. There's typically, like, if you look at it from a kind of big picture perspective, helicopter view perspective, there's 5 main ways to get more clients, get more leads. So it's going to be paid advertising. And then as I go through these, I'll explain also the pros and cons of each. So let's go through kind of the overview first. Paid advertising. The other one is referrals. Most people do referrals wrong, by the way. The other one is strategic partnerships, which is a variation of referrals, if you will. And then there's 2 organic approaches. One is organic outbound, and then the other one is organic inbound. So when it comes to paid advertising is great, but it's not great if you're starting out, because you very often just don't have the cash flow to run ads, and perhaps most likely your offer is not validated. So if you're throwing putting some budget behind your ads and your product is not validated, your offer is not validated, it's just going to cost you a lot of money to test and get new clients, right? And so that's a very stressful situation to be in. But the benefits of paid advertising is that it's highly scalable. So on the downside, it's expensive, it's risky. On the upside, it's scalable, right? So you add more money and then you can scale. It's not a linear scale. It typically kind of slows down a little bit. Efficiency of the paid advertising goes down as you add more budget typically, but it's still highly scalable, right? So the more money you have, the more money you can spend, the more money you will make, right? So, but again, if you were just starting out, I wouldn't look into ads at all. The other one is referrals. Referrals are great because typically we get higher quality leads through referrals. We have warmer leads. We have people who are interested in us. They're reaching out to us, or someone is referring them to us, and so they make an introduction. So it's an easier sell. The disadvantage is that it's not very scalable and it's hard to control, right? You cannot make people talk about you. You can have different programs and whatnot, like referral programs, but you can't make people send emails. You can't make people make introductions, right? So that's on the downside. I said referrals. Most people approach referrals wrong. There's another podcast episode on referrals, how to do referrals the right way. So I'd encourage you to listen to that one. But basically, in a nutshell, most people treat referrals as basically waiting for new business to come their way. And that's not what referrals should be or are. Okay, so listen to the podcast. The next one is strategic partnerships. So strategic partnerships is a variation of referrals, because there's a strategic partner that refers you new business, but it's more about building that strategic partnership. It's like very often based on a contract or an agreement, a legal document of doing this for the other business. And typically the way it works is that to have a strategic partner, you are looking for something that they call hub partners or hubs. So you're looking for services complementary to yours, or the same service being delivered to the same audience at the different level. So for example, if you are an agency, a marketing agency, you would have a strategic partnership with a different agency that's either way bigger than you or way smaller than you. And then those bigger wouldn't want to work with smaller clients that you can handle, or those smaller ones wouldn't be able to handle the bigger clients. This second kind of option is, less common because they would typically they wouldn't get those leads anyway. But very often the bigger agency will have leads that they don't want to handle because they're just too small, they don't meet their criteria, and they might be a good fit for you, right? So that's one option. The other option is that when you work with complementary complementary service partner, for example, if you are a marketing agency, again, working with real estate agents, you could, so your real estate agents are your clients. You could work with mortgage brokers or banks that would work with real estate agents as well, right? And so you would work with these guys, with the bank or the mortgage broker, and they would introduce you to real estate agents, right? So someone who's doing something either complementary in terms of the service or work with the same, has some sort of a connection with your audience, right? So that's strategic partnership. And then we have two types of organic approach, organic marketing, which is the outbound and inbound. Inbound basically means that you are creating demand and someone is raising their hand saying, hey, I'm interested. Can you work with me? What can you do for me? They come to you. And that is most likely based on your thought leadership approach. That is based on your content, blogs, podcasts, vlogging, whatever you do, that is where people realize you exist and they want to work with you based on what they have read or watched in terms of your content. It's super, super powerful because when someone does this, they come to you as warmed up, pre-framed, when it comes to your methodologies, your frameworks, your approach, your models, whatever. And so they're basically sold on the idea and they come to you just to kind of make sure that you're a good fit, right? So the disadvantage of the the inbound organic is that, again, you cannot really control it. And it's a long process to get results. With strategic partnerships, by the way, I don't think I mentioned the disadvantage is the same as referrals, where you cannot really control the partnership, and it's not very scalable that way. Thought leadership and then organic inbound is scalable in a sense that you can produce more content, but the problem is that that content, or challenge that problem. The challenge is that content has to be structured and focused on conversions and not only on like typical thought leadership. You cannot just keep on talking about strategies and be an amazing resource for people. You have to also think in your thought leadership content how to build the need and how to have a call to action to actually for people to actually understand that they can work with you and that you can work with them on certain topics and help them grow whatever the offer is, right? The challenge is that you have to it's not like, while it's scalable in terms of like you can produce more content, the challenge is that it's not easy to control which content brings what kind of result, right? And so it's kind of like and you have to look at your content on average, and after months or weeks or months of writing, vlogging, blogging, whatever you do, podcasting, then take average of I'm getting this many leads per month based on my content right now. And the assumption is that if you produce more content, you'll increase the number of leads coming your way as well. But then again, it will depend on type of content you have, right? So the truth is that if marketing and content marketing is done right, it will do all the heavy lifting or most of the heavy lifting, so that the heavy lifting doesn't have to be kind of pulled or dealt with by your sales function. So if you don't have a sales function, if you're a solo consultant, then what it means is that if your marketing is strong, then people come to you saying, hey, I want to work with you. And then your sales process might not even require a sales call. And if it requires a sales call, it might be a very simple, quick 15-minute vibe check, or check whether this is really actually a good fit or not. Otherwise, if your marketing is not strong and people end up being on calls with you, then at that point, actually, you have to be on calls with them, because you have to sell yourself and you have to sell the idea, have to sell the offer, and do all these other things. Then it's heavier on the sales side of things, right? So it's the inbound organic pulls a lot of weight if done correctly, and it's a massive accelerator of the inbound, organic inbound, and then any other channels as well. Because if you do ads, if you do outreach, be it cold email or cold DMs on social media platforms, if there's a strong content marketing behind it, those have a tendency to be more efficient and easier, because a lot of the heavyweight is already kind of pulled and dealt with by your marketing side, right? So there's that. And then the other piece in it is that you have the organic outbound, which is basically cold outreach. And the cold outreach can be in a different way, like done in different ways. It might be called calling, it might be called emailing, it might be called outreach on social media. And so the benefit of cold outreach is that you get a really, really quick response in terms of whether the client or the lead is a good fit or not, whether they want you or not. There's an art to it when it comes to not being too salesy, and actually delivering results and actually delivering value to clients, and not just showing up on LinkedIn and saying, hey, buy my stuff. That's not the point. When I say cold outreach, it doesn't have to be. A lot of people will kind of understand cold outreach as something that is salesy and sleazy, and that's not necessarily it. It can be done in a way that is not salesy or sleazy. It can be done in a way that is relationship building based, that is softer and delivers value and is beneficial to your potential prospects and leads, and it still delivers great sales results. So it will give you way faster results than content, for example. It's highly controllable. When it comes to scale, there's a limit to scaling if you do it yourself, but you can scale with hiring people, or you can scale with hiring help, right? So in my case, I used to do DMs. 100% of my DMs on LinkedIn were written by me and were kind of dealt by me. Now I have a little bit of help from a VA who's doing that. So if and all those kind of elements are like 5 different layers of or channels or modalities of selling: paid, referrals, strategic partnerships, and organic inbound and outbound. All of those at some point should actually be delivered and implemented in your business. So you should have all of them in your business. You can maybe swap the organic outbound for ads at some point, where obviously if you have the cash flow, you can just run ads and then you don't have to use organic outbound. That's, or you can do both, and then you're just gonna get better results, and blended ROI will be higher because you partially pay for ads, partially do it organically. Content should be always be in the back end, and kind of like a supportive function. And it can pull some weight in terms of bringing leads directly, but it will massively increase the efficiency of the other channels as well, right? And then strategic partnerships and referrals are no-brainers, because setting up a partnership program or referral program doesn't really cost you much. I mean, I recommend that you have some sort of incentives, but it's a low-hanging fruit. It's if you get a client from a referral and you have to pay a kickback of 10-15%, whatever, you only do that when you get a client, right? So there's no risk, and for that reason, there's no reason not to have referral programs and not to have strategic partnerships. So that should be implemented in your business regardless of what you do, right? So you should probably have all 5 at some point, or 4 or 5 channels, depending if you do ads or not. But if you need to start and get clients quickly, then content isn't necessarily going to give you that result. You should have some form of content as a base, because what happens is that people buy from people who they like, know, and trust. So you have to build the know, like, and trust factors, right? And how do people know that you exist? Well, they know that you exist because you post on social media, you run ads, you reach out to them as cold outreach, right? So there has to be a way to let other people know that you exist. So that's the know factor. Likability is where you show who you are. So you run, you write posts, you do workshops, you record videos, you record podcasts. So this is how they know whether I like this guy or not, or this person, right? And then the trust factor as well is where if they read or see the case studies or read your thought leadership and they agree or with what you said, or they kind of buy into your concepts, and that's how it's being done, right? So the know, like, and trust factor has to be there, and you can build that absolutely with content, and organic inbound is that goes through that those three kind of layers. And so what is important is that is to understand that there's time and place for every single of those channels or ways to get leads. Again, if you want to get leads and clients sooner than later, then having a base of know, like, and trust content on your, let's say you run, you're active on LinkedIn, having a base of know, like, and trust thought leadership on your LinkedIn, which means a well optimized profile, which means pieces of content on your profile as well, which means you engaging with the community through posting and commenting and responding to comments. If you have the base that helps you make your organic outbound more efficient, then that's enough. You just have to have the base. What I mean by that is that if you reach out to someone, cold outreach on LinkedIn, on DMs, and they check your profile, that profile makes sense. That profile shows and builds the know, like, and trust factors, right? So they understand who you are, they like you or not, and then they trust you based on your posts and your comments. So that is kind of the foundations or fundamentals of it. But then if you really want to get more clients and leads faster, then you really have to go all in on cold outreach on social media, because you will get feedback sooner versus just putting content out there and waiting for the inbound and demand generation. So I'm not saying one is better than the other, or one should be done or the other one shouldn't, because like I said, all of those 5 should be implemented in your business. I'm just saying that if you need to land clients in the next 6-12 weeks, then content and organic inbound might not be the best choice, because it takes time for that awareness to be built. Whereas if you reach out on LinkedIn and start having conversations with 100 people per week, which is absolutely doable, then you will see results way faster, and you don't have to have a massive content library behind you to be able to pull this off, because when you talk to people, you will be able to build the know, like, and trust factor directly. The thing is that that we have to have a lot of touch points before someone makes a decision to buy something from you. And there's different studies on it, 12 touch points, 13 touch points, 43 minutes, whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is the principle of, like, there has to be time spent with you, time spent on brand, time spent understanding who you are, so that know, like, and trust factors can be built and assessed by your prospects. And so when you think about what is the best way to build that, to create that time spent with you and the touch points, is that you want to think about what are the best way to compress that time. If you after results faster, then you have to compress the time and number of touch points and make the number of touch points as dense as possible, so that the results are faster and you can get either a yes or a no. Maybe is not an answer, by the way, in sales, so it's a yes or a no. Um, and so how do you do that? Well, if you start talking to someone and you build a relationship and you kind of start, qualifying them, you will get that know, like, and trust factor built sooner. Someone might say, hey, you're not a good fit, and that's completely fine because you have talked to that person, and they might say, well, that's not for me. That's great. That's fine, right? At least you have an answer. Someone might say, this is great. How can we work together? Perfect. That's great as well. When I say about compressing the time of and squeezing and making the touch points more densely kind of situated on the timeline, I'm not saying about, in your first DM asking someone to buy from you. I'm just saying to intensify the conversation and to offer those multiple touch points. And that can be, for example, when you talk with someone on DMs, you will start a conversation that's already a few touch points. Then maybe you will offer them some sort of an asset, a resource, a lead magnet, if you will, right? And then maybe you will invite them to listen to your podcast, and they will start listening to that as well, right? So you have multiple touch points already there. And as the relationship progresses, then you are still trying to compress that time spent together. Another option is to invite them for a workshop, which is something that I've started doing recently, and that's works really, really well. Because if someone is interested in what you do, they're not ready to buy from you because they don't really know you, like you, or trust you. They kind of are interested. Maybe they're starting to know, like, and trust, but they're not ready yet to spend $3, $5, $10,000 with you. But when you invite them to a workshop for which they pay €100, for example, the risk is very low. But then you compress that, again, those touch points in 1 or 2, 3 hours, whatever, however long your workshop is, and you are giving them a trial, a test of what it is to work with you. And that is an amazing way to convert people who just got to know you to those who are really, really hot and interested, hot as leads and prospects, interested in working with you because they started to know you, they started to like you, and they trust you based on what you have showed them on a workshop. So that's one of the ways to compress, and that would be another, to compress the time, right? And that would be another modality, another channel of or tool to compress that time and have people spend more time with your brand or on brand, right? So there's time and place for each. There's going to be a different weight, and that weight will change from organic outbound to something else, to something else, to something else as you go and build your business, right? So that's an important piece to understand, that it's not kind of set in stone, once and done. It might and will change. But if you're after quick result, the organic outbound is by far the way to go, because again, you will get results fastest. The content will help build the right foundations and help you reach your goals with other channels. What is important as well is the concept of, like, I call it a conveyor belt, right? So it's a little bit kind of connected with the time on brand, is that, and compressing the time, is that if you think about people not knowing you, so that's on this side of the spectrum, and then people who are becoming your clients. If you think about like a production line, a conveyor belt, right, that goes from here to here. So here you put people who just learned about you. They're like, oh, I saw a post by a guy and then it's interesting. And then you talk to them, right? And then they like what you said. And then maybe you jump on a call, and then maybe you invite them to a workshop. And then after the workshop, they become clients. That is your production line. That is your conveyor belt. And now your job with those different channels of sales, if you will, is to put as many people on that conveyor belt as densely as possible, and as many of those as possible, right? So if you do content, and if you can put them on that conveyor belt and then push them through certain steps so that they will land as your clients at the end, to a bucket of clients and pay you money, then that's how you do it. But content might not just be the fastest way. Content will maybe spread the production line, right? But then if you do content and also invite them to workshop, then that is, compressing it. If you talk to them, if you offer them a free strategy call, that is compressing that time. And then you get the answer faster. Again, it's not about getting on a call and selling. That's not what I mean. That you want to compress. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you have to compress all the efforts and try to see how you can actually have as many touch points as possible in as short time as possible as well. And so that's one thing. The other thing, some of you guys will have just longer sales cycles, and that's completely fine. So don't try to compress things into a day if it's supposed to take 3 months or 6 months, because there's like RFP processes and whatever. So still having that production line, the conveyor belt, understanding that there's an average time, an average length of that conveyor belt that is typical for your audience, typical for your industry. That's completely fine. Now, then your job is, because it has a fixed length, your job is to put as many of those prospects on that conveyor belt as possible, so that they're densely sitting next to each other, and then will slowly start falling towards the bucket of your clients. And so the more you have of those, the more often they will drop in your bucket. And very common mistake is that you have the sales cycle that's long and you put the prospect once in a while. So what happens at the end of it is that you get a client once in a while. So what you have to do, you just have to intensify the introduction to your production line and putting more people on the production line more often. And then understanding the process will take some time, but because you have so many people in the pipeline, on the conveyor belt, this person is on step A, this person's on step B, C, D, and so on and so forth. In the end, you'll have A coming a client, B coming a client, C coming, you know what I mean? So your job is then to put as many on the conveyor belt as possible. And the question is, how do you do that in your business, in your industry, and what is the best channel for you to do it? If you feel like it's content and that's working, and you see that through content you can put people densely on the conveyor belt, that's fantastic. But very rarely that is actually true, because again, content is not easy to control. Content is not easy to produce in a mass volume, in a way that allows you also to focus on delivery, especially if you're a solo consultant, right? So something has to give. And going on the kind of outbound outreach, kind of train, allows you to quickly close a few clients, get the cash flow in, and then focus on productizing what you do, so that you are not spending, all of your time on the delivery side of things. You have the time to do more prospecting, maybe to do content, or maybe hire a VA who can take over your stuff, so that you can focus on the things that are actually moving the needle in your business, right? So also remember about this, DAD idea, DAD framework. So delete, automate, delegate, right? If there are certain things you can delete from your process, from your business, you should do that. If you can automate them, you should do that. If you cannot delete, cannot automate, you should delegate. And that goes also for prospecting and sending, cold DMs. Like I said, I used to do that 100% myself, but now I'm delegating. I can't delete this from my business. I don't want to automate this. I don't want any automation tools do it for me, because it's just not efficient, doesn't work for me. I'm all about building relationships, understanding if people want what I have, and I need to understand whether they have a problem I can fix. And so I delegated that to my VA, who's fantastic at what she does. So at some point you will do that too. I understand, like, sending DMs all day long on LinkedIn or Instagram is painful, but doing that will help you reach 100K months quite easily, being a solo consultant. So it will take effort. It is labor intensive, 100%. Is it fun and sexy? Not really. I mean, I love talking to people, but at some point, you wake up, you're on LinkedIn, and you go to bed, you're still on LinkedIn. But so there's a limit to that as well. But my VA loves what she does. At least that's what she says. But it is what it is. Like if you have to, like sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and to get the results that you're after. So by the way, every single channel that you have to build your business and do business development will require some sort of labor and effort and whatever, right? In ads, the effort is the money. I mean, like you have to spend money. With referrals, you also have to find those partners and strategy partners. You have to find them, and then you have to pay them kickbacks because you have to incentivize them. Like, why else would someone refer you, right? And then with content, like you have to spend the time on understanding what kind of content I want to build, and then actually do it, and then make sure that it's hitting the mark, and then that is engaging, and that it's converting, and all that stuff. Like it's also labor intensive. So is cold outreach. If you do email marketing or cold calling or cold outreach on any Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever you use, that's also labor intensive. That also takes certain amount of effort and energy and attitude and all that stuff. So every single thing will cost you something. It's just a matter of choosing the one that you will be consistent at and the one that actually brings you results. And so that's why sometimes you have to bite the bullet, and sometimes you just have to do the things that you don't necessarily love in the beginning, that to build to build in a position where you can delegate that. And cold outreach might just be the thing that will help you get to your results faster, so that you can focus on the things that you like, enjoy and are great at. So anyway, I hope this helps. It was just a overview summary. We'll have more conversations on sales and how to do sales in future videos and episodes. But just wanted to shoot this overview to give you a little bit of an understanding. If you know anyone who would benefit from this podcast, please share this with them, and definitely subscribe for more, because there's more coming. I'll see you in the next one.